RFK Jr. is throwing his support behind Donald Trump, in part because he and the former president agree on a number of key issues, and that includes the American diet and what's in our food.
I also want to salute Bobby's decades of work as an advocate for the health of our families and our children. Nobody's done more.
We talked about not about the things that separate us because we don't agree on everything, but on the values and the issues that bind us together. And one of the issues that he talked about was having safe food and ending the chronic disease epidemic. And don't you want a president that's going to make America healthy again?
Before his announcement, I spoke with Kennedy about this very topic and a potential position in the Trump White House. Take a look. I thought it'd be great to just kind of look at some of these items because parents are encountering these food items in grocery stores everywhere. Maybe we could just start right here with seed oils. We're hearing a lot about seed oils. Why should people be worried about these kind of products?
Seed oils are one of the most unhealthy ingredients that we have in foods. And seed oils, the reason they're in the foods is because they're heavily subsidized. They're very, very cheap, but they are associated with all kinds of very, very serious illnesses, including body-wide inflammation.
Right.
Which affects all of our health. It's one of the worst things you can eat, and it's almost impossible to avoid. If you eat any processed food, you're going to be eating seed oil.
Right, and it's interesting, the government subsidizes it. Why would the government want to subsidize something that's going to make people sick, and then in the end, we all end up paying for that in terms of healthcare costs, which are skyrocketing?
Yeah, because that is a direct result of corruption. About 75% of FDA's budget comes from regulated industry, and that means food processors and pharmaceutical industry. All of them profit from a sick population.
You know, a big item that, and by the way, it's getting very expensive, are cereals. Why is the food coloring in particular bad?
Food coloring, you see here yellow food coloring, that is a petroleum product. Mm-hmm. It's associated with really, with depression. It's associated with autoimmune injuries and ADHD.
Yeah.
These, and red dye also is very bad. In Europe, the same companies are producing the same products, but they're using natural coloring. But here they can get away with it. We have about almost 1,000 chemicals that are in our food that are either outright banned in Europe or actively discouraged. So you wouldn't be able to buy this kind of stuff in Europe. You ask about why it's so cheap, why it's so ubiquitous. It's because we subsidize the worst foods. We subsidize it with about 70% of our food stamp program is to processed foods, which are all poison.
Right. One of the things that's interesting is you'll see on labels, natural flavors, which is this catch-all phrase that I guess was lobbied for, but the ingredients in natural flavors are not really natural.
No. In our country, natural flavors are chemical products. So you can't trust what's on the ingredient label, and the reason for that, again, is government corruption. It's that the agency, the USDA, the FDA, have been captured by the industries they're supposed to regulate. And they all have an interest in subsidies and then in mass poisoning the American public.
Yeah, I want to talk about pesticides, and then let's talk about the policy. So let's talk about the pesticides and the things that worry you about. I mean, this looks like fresh food, right? What should I be worried about here?
Yeah, I mean, the irony is, like, for example, my wife loves kale, and she had the impression that kale is actually good for you. If it's organic, it's very good for you. But most kale and strawberries, for example, grapes, are contaminated with pesticides. And particularly the Environmental Working Group has found what they call the dirty dozen, some of the worst pesticides on these products. So, I look at a strawberry and I think, oh, this is a healthy food. Right. But in most cases, unless it's organic, certified organic, you are getting something that's actually hurting you.
What can be done at a government level to stop this and make people get healthy?
Yeah, as president, I'll issue an executive order on day one that anybody who is recommending food products in USDA or FDA at any of those committees, if you are going to be on those committees, you have to have no conflict of interest. We spend 5 times our military budget on chronic disease.
Yeah.
And it's made us the sickest population in the world. And if you wonder why we're the sickest people in the world, why do we have these epidemics of ADHD and depression and all these kind of psychiatric illnesses that have been linked by the science to these kind of foods, to the ingredients of these foods? And why do we have these neurological disorders, all this epidemic of autoimmune disease?
So many of these products are geared towards children, which I think is what's really tragic about it. It's sort of like you're putting them at a very early age on this pathway to chronic disease. And then at the end of that is pharma to sort of cure whatever the food did to you.
The advisors who actually choose the nutrition guidelines are almost all of corrupted. They're conflicted.
Are you willing to take on a position like this in the Trump administration as health czar?
Well, one way or the other, I'm going to be fighting to get this stuff out of our foods. I mean, we're poisoned. We have a generation of kids that are swimming around in a toxic soup right now. And we need to, we're betraying them. We're supposed to be taking care of our kids, and we're letting these industries corrupt our agencies and mass poison them. And, nobody in the world has a chronic disease epidemic of the kind that we have in this country.
Yeah, it's true. I think it's a sleeper issue of this election. So I really appreciate you coming on, explaining this, breaking it down, and laying out your policies.
Rachel, thanks for having me, and thanks for paying attention to this. I think I know that it's difficult in your position to go up against powerful industries. I'm glad you're telling the truth.